Welcome back. Creating Inclusive Workplace Presentations and Documents, Module 2. For Module 2, let's quickly discuss physical and virtual space considerations for workplace presentations. When thinking about physical space, when you're giving your presentation, you could be giving it in an office setting that you're used to on a day-to-day basis. It could be a conference setting or a new or different location. And so some of these things you may have control over, others you may not. But what I'm going to present to you are just some general considerations when thinking about the physical space. What's about to appear on the screen are statements to state or questions you can ask yourself in relation to preparing for the presentation. I present them as statements. You can think of them as questions you can ask yourself as well. As a starting point, I have checked to ensure this space is ADA compliant. This is a U.S. law. If you're not located in the U.S., research the legal expectations related to people with disabilities in the workplace within your country. And so again, this is a starting point. Your workplace should be ADA compliant just as a legal expectation of workplaces. And so hopefully you don't have any issues regarding this, but this is something that you're going to want to make sure, especially if you have a leadership role within your workplace. My room setup is structured in such a way that everyone will have access regardless of physical ability. So some things to think about is your chairs, your seating arrangement, the type of tables you have and how you have those set up, as well as how you have refreshments and food placement. And so if this is a presentation that does have refreshment or foods or snacks, think about how people would be able to access the space with reasonably low effort. The space in relation to food and refreshments, but maybe you have booths or vendors. I'm not really sure. We're talking just in general workplace presentations. And so that really runs the gamut. And so just think about how you are setting up the space with what control you have to make it as accessible and straightforward to navigate. I have planned for audio and video or AV and other technology needs to ensure this presentation is accessible to the greatest extent possible. And so microphones, projectors, I have closed captioning and transcription services. Something to keep in mind is that when you use Microsoft 365 PowerPoint, they do have a capability where you can do live closed captioning. And so this is going to be something that you're going to want to check out. But in general, especially as the bigger kind of presentations you give, microphones are not an option. They are a necessity. They are an expectation. And even for smaller amounts of people you have gathered, you cannot always see when someone has a hearing issue, right? Not everyone wears a hearing aid. Not everyone is legally deaf who is experiencing some hearing loss. And so you're going to be wanting to plan to make sure that there are microphones present and there are some options for people to hear your presentation, or to, if they can't hear, to read your presentation. So there needs to be multiple modalities for people to engage your material and your content. Now let's talk about virtual space. There are more and more people, more companies, more organizations that are getting comfortable with the digital world and work from home, virtual conferences, webinars, things like that. And so it's going to be important for us to think about how we can be the most exclusive even in this virtual space that we're navigating, and that's becoming our new normal in a lot of ways. So first up, prior to presentation, I sent out instructions for accessing and using the virtual platform along with screenshots. Whether it's, I don't want to give any shout outs. This is not sponsored. And so whatever virtual platform you're using, you as the person giving the presentation should be very comfortable with it. You should have gone through whatever instruction or training so that you're able to let others know, whether it's your colleagues or other stakeholders, constituents, whoever you're giving this presentation to, you should be able to comfortably give them the information they need to be able to access it. And so that means you doing the work to know how to understand it. It can be very daunting. It can be very overwhelming logging into a virtual platform for the first time as a person tuned into the presentation and not know where to start. And so be as detailed but also as straightforward as possible. For visual learners, I would say send some screenshots that give some very straightforward information on, okay, I go here versus here to even have access to the presentation. And so plan ahead so that you can give these instructions, so everyone who is present for the presentation can access it at minimal effort. I planned for technical difficulties in helping people troubleshoot tech issues by having a buffer time built in. I think buffer times are good for in-person or virtual presentations, but I think it's extra important for the virtual space because there are going to be some technical difficulties. Even when you send out those instructions, people have a hard time with these things. That may lessen as time goes on, but still, we're all getting used to it, where many of us are not digital natives. So that means that we haven't grown up. We haven't been born in a world where we're used to navigating the digital space. And so just plan for that to help people who may have trouble logging in, and so they get there a little bit late. Just have a 5 to 7 minute, that's my go-to, of time to allow people to kind of get used and acclimated to the virtual platform that you're going to be using. I have checked and tested sound, aka audio settings. And so get familiar with the virtual platform you're using, the one that I use. When I give presentations, when I've used this platform, I had to make sure when I wanted to show videos and different things like that, that there was like some special settings that you had to go in to be able to share your audio from, let's say, YouTube versus my audio just speak. So I say all this to say, have practiced, have tested it out, make sure if you have multimedia incorporated into this presentation besides you speaking, that you have the proper settings in place, that everyone is going to be able to actually hear your presentation and hear the videos that you're embedding within your content. I have closed captioning turned on, or a service that provides captioning. If this is for your workplace, hopefully, because they are ADA compliant, this is a part of the virtual platform that they use, or they have another service that gives those automated captioning. I am a stickler for this. Again, you don't always know what someone is dealing with in terms of their abilities. And so you don't, and also beyond that, like, people take in information differently. Some people want to hear it, and some people want to hear it and read it at the same time. Whatever the situation is, whether someone is deaf, whether someone just learns better and processes information better by looking at it, and so those closed captioning, you want to have this on. If your workplace is shopping around for a virtual platform, I would say that they should be making sure that the platform provides a closed captioning service as a part of the package for purchasing it. Okay, next up, I provide digital / electronic handouts in advance or in a way that is low tech and straightforward. And so if there's anything that you want people to have reviewed or skimmed over, or if it just makes logistical sense to have sent over the presentation slides or the handout prior to, have done that. And if for whatever reason you want an element of surprise and you want to be able to give them the handouts in the moment, know your virtual platform well enough to know how you can do this in a very low tech and straightforward way, so people aren't getting intimidated or overwhelmed with having the presentation pulled up on their computer and then trying to figure out how to access the handout that you just sent them in this weird way that they've never seen before. Hopefully you've gone over this in that first bullet point where you've sent out the instructions for accessing the platform. But again, just know your platform so you know how you can do this in a very low tech way. And by low tech, I just mean something that any reasonable person with a basic level of technological skill set would be able to navigate. So for this next bullet, you might think, well, this should be the case whether we're in person or doing this presentation virtually. You are right, but especially for virtual space. So for presentations longer than an hour, I built in a break. You want to give people's eyes from screen time. Again, if it's longer than an hour in person, you want to do this as well, but I think this is extra important for our eyes, and those of us who can see, who are going to be watching this presentation. You can give people headaches. It just can be a lot. So build in that break time for people.